Yo, hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna talk about the unfinished obelisk of Aswan. This obelisk, if it had been completed, would have been the largest obelisk in all of Egypt. Currently, the largest obelisk still standing is located in the Temple of Karnak. The current weight of the obelisk is estimated at 1,168 tons. It is said that at the time, it was commissioned by Queen Hatshepsut around 1500 before Christ. And the question on everyone's lips is, how could they have erected and transported this enormous piece of granite from Aswan to Luxor, where theoretically it would have ended up? The official theory? Today it tells us that this obelisk was made with dolerite balls that were constantly hammered and rubbed. That's not possible, and it's inconsistent with what's found in the Aswan quarry. We'll see why. We eat it afterwards, right?
Okay, let's move on to the corridor.
Oh, yes.
How's it going, my friend? How are you? We're on the 80,000. What's up? It's...
Heavy? What?
Does that inspire you, Tatiana, when we... on Aswan's career, when there are other groups and other guides. In fact, they do demonstrations of the practical work a little bit, where they show how supposedly it was done at the time. And every time, it's a bit discouraging to see the tourists watching this thing who are there. Oh yeah, it's... interesting. When you see the Aswan quarry in all its details, it's impossible to believe in that hypothesis. The first aspect we're going to address is the extraction techniques, and the extraction techniques in the Aswan quarry. We can detect two of them. The first one, which is probably the most recent, it simply shows notches where wood was placed, which was then made to swell with water. And when it expands, the pressure causes the granite to explode. This technique, which is not being questioned at all, however, had a major drawback: the complete lack of control over how the material breaks. And because of that, this extraction technique resulted in a huge amount of waste and losses compared to the work that was started. And we also find this around the Pyramid of Mykerinos and the Pyramid of Khafra, whose facings were made of granite. And then much later, there were illegal extractions by people who came to take directly from the remains of the granite facings. And we can see the blocks that are broken in a completely chaotic way, and we can clearly see the waste, the mistakes, and the blocks they weren't able to use. Why do I say that this technique is the most recent? It's because we know that the Greeks and the Romans used it. And in the Aswan quarry, there is no place near the obelisk that has these holes. On the other hand, everywhere else, we have these kinds of shapes, as if the granite had been softened, as if we had been able to dig into it with a bucket, with an excavator. A bit like a sorbet, where you dig in with a spoon. And that's really a problem, because whatever we might say, we are unable to determine the technique that was used. And that's why today we have remains that look like this. We find these traces from the moment we enter the quarry, all the way up as we climb and arrive in front of the obelisk, and even a little further. And I'll come back to that in a moment. When we keep in mind the technique we think they used, there's a huge gap between what the technique allows and what we see before our eyes. Around the obelisk, on the obelisk, or directly on its sides. We again see these marks, these kinds of hollows, rounded shapes, carvings, what the English call scoop marks. Where that comes from, we can't know. But in any case, working with granite, which is a very, very hard rock, has nothing to do with what we're capable of doing today. I'm not saying it was a more advanced technology or technique. I'm simply saying that it's unknown and different when you're there. Even if we base ourselves on an assumption that says the official theory is acceptable, when you try, you realize that it's not. We must end the condescension and modern egocentrism of believing we're at the peak of evolution with complete knowledge. No, we don't know everything, because at the edge of the obelisk, we can't explain what we see. And not only do we have this race, but we also have these kinds of wells, what we can call technical wells, which are scattered all over the quarry. This time, we can accept the official explanation. It's that they dug these wells to check the condition of the rock at depth. And if the rock showed, at depth, a condition that could confirm it might have been extracted, at that point, the work continued. There was no problem with that. However, that doesn't answer the question at all. How did they dig these wells? They bring up the same theory about the balls again when discussing the digging of wells. I'll let you imagine the struggle for those who were in charge of digging these wells with the supposed balls. Assuming the official theory is possible, it's still quite far-fetched. There's another hidden place, away from the public at the quarry, that clearly proves it's not possible. I'll show you why. Let's go. Let's assume that, indeed, they use these balls to hit and rub, okay? No problem. When we're in a, let's say, two-dimensional context, it can make sense. When we leave the unfinished obelisk, we take a hidden path, invisible to those unaware of its existence. Despite being just as interesting as the unfinished obelisk, no one shows it to visitors. In my view, it's intentionally concealed, as it would otherwise be publicly accessible, so that it creates a second attraction at the site of the unfinished obelisk, which, in fact, is visited very quickly. In any case, it makes no sense not to open it to the public. Around this other obelisk, or in any case, this block that started to be extracted, we can still see these bucket marks, which this time are not just vertical or horizontal. They dig in and go up underneath the rock, and the height is about 60 centimeters. So it's physically impossible that workers simply had fun being on their knees or lying down. It's impossible to horizontally strike balls weighing several kilos. And on top of that, you can clearly see the continuity of the trace that starts from the right wall, goes down, passes over the floor, and goes back up underneath. So, here, we're absolutely not dealing with banging, rubbing, or any kind of abrasion work. We're using a technique here, whether it's mechanical, manual, or assisted by tools and automated equipment. You can see that there's only one movement that performs a single type of extraction. And we can prove this demonstration by going even further. And for that, I'll take you back to the entrance of the obelisk. When you're at the tip of the obelisk and you look to your right, which is west, you're facing a wall, and what do you see on this wall? From far away, this wall looks extremely flat. But when you look closer, when you zoom in, you realize that you can make out very faint traces, which look exactly like what you find elsewhere, these kinds of bucket marks, the scoops, and at the bottom left of this wall, what do we find? We find a huge stone block that has a rounded shape, a kind of rock protrusion that fits exactly into the hollow at the top of the wall. This clearly shows that this block comes directly from, it was extracted and it fell from this very wall. So what conclusion can we draw from this? It's that these scoop marks, these traces of buckets, like spoon marks in sorbet, they are intrinsically linked to the techniques used to extract the rock. And since they are present all around the obelisk, it clearly means that the balls were not used to carve and dig out the obelisk. It's that before working on the obelisk, this technique was actually used on the east side of the obelisk. When we're able to walk there directly as a group, it's very complicated, but when I go alone, you can kind of get around it a little bit. We see exactly the same squares that we find on the vertical wall I was talking about a few moments ago. Everything overlaps. We can see the logic and coherence through the techniques that were used and what their purposes were. Regardless, this video aims to illustrate the information we're receiving through coherent, thoughtful, and well-argued visuals. With 4th grade level hands-on exercises in a rather evasive manner, it is simply not possible. And those who stubbornly insist that it is are either lying or haven't seen the site with their own eyes. I'm aware that alternative Egyptology irritates many people. I also know that it's a subject that fascinates a lot of people who share this opinion. However, when it comes to the concept, whether you're for or against it, the only way to know the truth is to see all of this in images. Sadly, not all people can witness this personally. That's why this video will serve as a bit of an illustrated argument to show that what we're being told is simply not possible. I don't have any new or other answers. It would be presumptuous to claim otherwise. But in any case, it's very easy to show that the official theory is incompatible with what we see on site. Except that I don't throw out wild speculations with new theories. I'm just here to show facts and raise awareness. So that's it. This episode is over. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you now have some new information to better understand the inconsistencies we see on site. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. In both cases, I encourage you to share the video on social media and to subscribe. And I'll see you very soon for new videos. Bye, bye, Estsay.
Captioning Société Radio.
Canada.
I am yours, you are yours, and my soul fleet. Oh. Goodbye, I was. Hello.
How are you? The taxi, by the way. We're going right away.
Okay, if you need help, okay, all right. Good night. Good night. Are you okay or not? I'm going.
I'm going.